Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another Ryan and Dave show, catalog update and announcement.
Catalog.
Dave, Dave seems a little worn out from all the catalog work we've done this year so far. It has been a busy cycle to get this one ready. As y'all can tell, we've put a lot into this catalog. It's a very full C2 of all new items. As most of our Volume 2 catalogs are, it's a little more heavily skewed towards the legacy and scale end of the product line, but we do have some fun traditional items in here as well. So Dave and I are going to walk you through the first 2/3 or so of the catalog, and then we'll take a quick break and bring in the real stars of the show, Megan and Corey, to take you through the traditional portion before we wrap up.
Remember, you can follow along in the catalog with us. Go to Lionel.com and go to the catalog section.
Everything is online there, and printed catalogs have already been mailed out. You'll probably start receiving those over the next few days, as well as our dealers will have them in stock very soon if they don't already.
Yes.
All right.
Because I want one right now, Ryan.
I know. We miss our paper copies too. They're helpful to have and hang on to, and take notes on while we're at home.
It's that new book smell.
Okay, I think we can skip the table of contents. Let's go right on into our legacy steam locomotives, and we'll start off with one that hasn't been in the catalog since 2007.
This thing has more details of any engine that I've ever seen.
It really is one of our more detailed and nicely rendered models, and it's nice to see it finally back in the catalog. The C&O F19 Pacifics, there were only 5 of them. And they're sort of a very different design, but their beauty comes in their lack of reform, I guess you would say, as opposed to being all streamlined or whatnot.
But not in an unclassy way.
No.
Right? It's a very beautiful looking locomotive.
To make the most out of the space available within their clearance diagrams, the C&O moved a lot of what would normally be tucked away somewhere on the side of the engine up to the front. But then did their best with trim here and there, and always kept these nice and polished and clean to give them a polished first-class appearance. And that'll be replicated here on the models. We've got several different deco variations.
And tender
variations on these.
Yes.
So I'll try and walk through some of these. Dave, do you want to talk a little bit about what they all share in common in terms of features and whatnot before I go through the minutia of why this one's different than that one?
Yep, they all have wheels, which makes them really cool trains. But obviously they all have legacy. So you got your standard 200 speed steps with the legacy rail sounds, LED lighting with bicolor marker lights, Crew Talk, and all the fun stuff you've come to expect in a legacy locomotive. Stack smoke, whistle steam, track IR, the whole kit and caboodle. And I don't know, just going to be another legacy engine with amazing sound system.
Yeah. The last time these were released, they were still in TMCC.
Yes. So they definitely need the upgrade.
All right. So looking at our first spread of F19s here, we've got 3 different prototypical and 1 fantasy scheme on this page. The 2 at upper left and lower right both represent the locomotives as they would have looked pulling the Sportsman. These had the Eagle emblem added to the feed water heater on the front of the smoke box. The only real deco and detail differentiation between these 2 is the presence or lack thereof of the C&O twisted, intertwined line logo there on the coal bunker part of the Vanderbilt tender. That was added in the early 30s, about 32, 33. They started adding that to the locomotive. So we did one version with it, one version without. Up in the upper right, you'll see the locomotives as they look towards the end of their lives as Pacifics in the 1940s. In 1946, they were rebuilt into Hudsons. And so before the end, a lot of these had received larger tenders. So this will have the slightly larger coal tender as we've used in the past on the Père Marquette 1225 and other Berkshire locomotives. And they also added the number boards to the smoke box because apparently there just wasn't enough stuff on that smoke box. So a little bit of a different look on that version and a detail variation we have not done before on this locomotive. And then lastly on this page, as we were looking through the photos, the C&O workers kept these so clean in most of the early years, even during the Great Depression, that with the reflection coming off of the boiler and the different angles, they really looked like they had a gray painted boiler for a while. And did enough historical research to try to determine that that wasn't the case, but it looked so darn nice that we put a fantasy scheme in there anyway, just for the fun of it, because it's quite a classy locomotive.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Now into the super realistic ones.
Yeah, well, we do have one prototypical engine on here. Up at the upper right corner, number 492 is the way these locomotives looked at as delivered, with only the large road number on the tender. Again, all the other details that you see on these, the polished ends, the polished cylinder heads with the stars and jacketing and so forth. And for the most part, these locomotives will also have polished rods as well, since they were kept clean. We did a stand-in Père Marquette version as well. The C&O and Père Marquette had power back that did swap back and forth between the two roads. The F-19s didn't go up there, but had they not been rebuilt, there's a chance something like that could have been done. So we used those same detail packages and did a what if Père Marquette version. And then some C&O Pacifics, though again not the F-19s, went to the Richmond, Fredericksburg, and Potomac. And they also had some of their own locomotives that were built to basically essentially the same design, a little bit different, but very similar to these locomotives. And so we did an RF&P version, and those have a beautiful dark blue boiler, and they were trimmed out very nicely with the red cab window sashes and white and gold trim and so forth. So really beautiful locomotive. But the ones that I'm sure a lot of people are going to be talking about are the two holiday-themed engines. Mm-hmm. We've got one for Halloween, the Phantom Express, some great graphics on that. And then another for Christmas, the Silver Bell Limited. This will match very nicely with the passenger cars that we released in 2023's Volume 1 catalog earlier this year, along with the E8 diesels. So if you've got that train on order and want to be able to swap between steam and diesel power, you have an option. If you didn't get in on the diesels and you want to do a steam train, those passenger cars would still work very nicely with this locomotive too. Dave, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the things we do with the sounds on our holiday locomotives?
Yep. And we started doing legacy, Christmas and Halloween engines probably 3 or 4 years ago now, Ryan, I'd say. Mm-hmm. And we came up with some really great sound systems for those, with custom audio and sound effects and dialogue. And we'll be continuing using those sound sets, but we actually will be upgrading as well. So we're going to look into upgrading new voices, new characters in both Christmas and in the Halloween versions, especially in the Halloween. It's nice to set us up with some different characters, and there's definitely a lot of spooky characters I can think of for the Halloween time.
Yeah, and with the 5 different whistle selections in here now too, it gives us some more options. So usually we'll substitute. I think we did a French horn for one of the Christmas engines we did recently. Yeah. We've done werewolf howl in the past for Halloween. All quillable and very fun.
Creepy old church bells and stuff like that. So
yeah, so we go a little outside the box and have some fun with the sound sets in these locomotives. And those who've had some of our Halloween or Christmas engines in the past, you already know that. And they're a lot of fun to run around the track.
Yeah, we're really thinking outside the casket on this one.
Okay, and 2 more Pacifics here. Wouldn't be right to do this class of locomotives and not introduce the George Washington train along with it. This became the premier passenger train on the B&O during the 1930s, and the F-19s were the class that hauled it in these earliest years. Here you'll see the eagle on the feed water heaters replaced with the silhouette of Washington, and the train name was also put on a plaque on the tender. Again, we've done it with and without the C&O Herald on the coal bunker. Mm-hmm. We also are bringing back for the first time since 2007 the George Washington passenger cars. These are all 18-inch cars with our standard passenger car features: LED lighting, die-cast trucks, opening doors, figures inside. We'll have 3 different 2-packs, and then also a station sounds diner.
Hey, Brian, where did the George Washington run between?
It ran between Washington and Cincinnati.
Nice. Just like the cover would suggest.
Yes. And then there were connecting services beyond that from those points as well. It was also one of the few trains in the country that had the train name and not Pullman on the car letter boards,
Excellent.
and was the second train to be fully air conditioned in the country.
That's prerequisite for me.
Do you know what the first was?
Hmm.
Well, you didn't do your homework then. I'm disappointed.
Well, but I can take any train with air conditioning now.
The first was on the B&O.
Ah,
All right.
well, they needed AC on the B&O, so they didn't have BO.
Okay, we're going to put this one back on track real quick. Let's move over to the 2662s. Dave, you want to talk a little bit about this one?
Yeah, this is the USRA 2662.
Mm-hmm.
And I just love that big gray one, man. There's a whole lot of gray.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've done a couple of fantasy schemes here, in addition to really one prototypical road name on here, truly for the USRA 2662, and that's the Nickel Plate, which inherited theirs from the Wheeling and Lake Erie.
Mm-hmm.
We've done this engine fairly recently and several other runs, so we picked some different roads that had very similar looking, if not identical, locomotives to the USRA design.
But I feel like there's going to be one skew here that people are really going to gravitate towards, Ryan.
Yeah, I think so too. But
I wonder why.
I don't know. We've done the Rio Grande with the green boiler, Northern Pacific with the gray, the Weyerhaeuser lumber. There were several of these that were in logging service, and a Norfolk and Western version as well in their earlier, very simple decoration scheme. For guys looking to customize, that might be a good place to start. There are some different front end details from skew to skew on these to try and better match the prototypes. This is what I like to call either it's sort of somewhere in between a very small big locomotive or a big small locomotive. It has all the look of a large steam engine with the articulation, but it comes in a smaller size, so these will do an 054 curve.
Nice.
And the main reason for bringing this back again this time was, of course, Western Maryland Scenic 1309.
Woohoo!
Now, this was originally a CNO locomotive, and it was set in the B&O Museum in Baltimore for many decades. And then, as we all know, leading into the recent use has been restored out in Cumberland and has made her return to steam really just as we were coming out of the pandemic restrictions, and is now running regularly up and down the scenic line between Cumberland and Frostburg. Purists will note there are some differences between this class of CNO 2662 and the USRAs, but they were derivatives and very similar.
Yeah.
So for those looking at that, we've added details here and there to, again, get as close as we can with our tooling. We also have 5 passenger cars to go along with this. These represent current cars out there on the railroad, so you can have an accurate consist behind 1309. You've got two packs of 21-inch passenger cars with the coaches, and then the dome car, and then a Station Sounds full-length dome car as well that has the normal Station Sounds features that we put in these cars.
It's exciting.
Mm-hmm.
I contributed.
All right. Next up, we've got
280.
Dave, I know you have a favorite amongst this one, and we've done some design work and upgrades here. You want to talk a little bit about which one perked your fancy?
I can't see it. Is it a giant red plow?
Yeah, there's a giant red plow on there. Dave became a fan of the CNS version, and we debated for a little bit whether we should do it with or without plow, and Dave settled that debate pretty quickly. So I think that'll be a real standout with the large wedge snow plow on the front there. We also have Black River number 40, DM&IR 322, which is a preserved locomotive up in Minnesota. You'll notice that has our switcher style tender like the prototype. The Grand Trunk version also has the shorter tender like we just delivered on the 260s. Lehigh Valley and a Seaboard with a really nice splash of color there for the Southeast guys.
Yeah, and the one with the red plow, that'll be a cast brass plow, and we'll actually mount a scale coupler on the front of it. So it's going to look very much like the real one, and you'll be able to plow anything over on your layout. Imagine spreading ballast with it. That'd just be cool.
Oh boy. Uh, I can't wait for the customer service calls about trains derailing on spilled ballast.
I'm meh.
What's nice about these locomotives, and we try and do at least one version like this in every catalog, is we want a locomotive that's got all the full legacy features on board, but in a smaller footprint, and will go on an 031 curve. So if you like the scale size, you like the detail, you like the features, this gives you an option at a lower price point and a smaller minimum radius than, say, some of the things we're going to look at next.
Yep.
And pretty much every railroad had at least one consolidation, so there's no shortage of options for us here.
Yeah.
All right, the Pennsy M1s.
This is quite the engine.
This was.
And we've actually put quite the effort into it, too.
So this started off as sort of a simple project.
As all of Ryan's projects
yeah,
do.
And then we went down the rabbit hole. The Pennsy had three groups of mountains. The first were the M1 class. These arrived after the prototype in early 1930. There were 200 of these. And then rightly on the heels of those came another 100 units in the class M1A, some of which were later rebuilt into class M1B. Side story. We've done the M1As in the past. Others have done the M1Bs. But the actual M1 had been a bit of a hole in the catalog for a long time. The primary spotting difference, for those not versed in Pennsy language, between the M1 and the M1A really is the presence of the cylinder pipes from the boiler down to the pistons. On the M1s, as we've done here, they're external. On the M1As, they were internal. So it's a different looking casting there in the cylinder saddle.
There's a lot of different detail variations between this and the M1A.
Yeah, so it started off with, let's just make a new cylinder saddle for this and we can have an M1. And that turned into, well, if we're going to do that, let's fix all of the things that we'd like to do.
So now we're doing new slides for the entire body shell. We've redesigned the pilot to have a more scale pilot truck and a shorter pilot like the real one has, and everything else that Ryan has made me do so that we can have a much more prototypical looking locomotive.
Yes, there were a lot of things on the original that left me feeling a little bit underwhelmed, so we've made some improvements. This version will have three different styles of pilot, two different smokebox fronts, and we've used, I think, four different, if you count the presence of the doghouse tenders on behind it.
Some of them are going to have them oval-shaped marker lights.
Three different styles of markers.
Class lights, whatever.
So the only standard legacy feature that this actually won't have is the bicolor class lights, and that's worth noting. The Pennsy discontinued use of those in 1927, and so the M1s were all built without them.
Yep.
So these will have functioning on-off marker lights on the pilot and tender, either on the pilot beam or on the smoke box near the headlight on the later versions, as prototypical for that road. These will have whistle steam, and they'll have all the other standard legacy features that you've come to expect and love.
But with either a little tender or a big giant tender.
Do note in here there are different minimum radii recommendations based on whether you have the 8-wheel tender or the 4 or 6-wheel tender. The smaller two will do an 054 curve. The big 8-wheel tanks, as you see on the two post-war versions at the bottom, right here, those will require an 072 curve. Just because, again, it's the tender, not the locomotive in these cases.
It's got some wheels to it.
So we'll do a quick run through here of the locomotives just to give you some sense of what the detailed variations are. No two of these are the same. Up first, we have a early, or I should say mid-1930s version, as they would have been in passenger service. These details all come from photos that we have found published to get things right. This has a K4 style tender, the early front end with the smoke box out front and the hen coop pilot. Below that, one that will probably get a lot of attention because of its paint scheme. This is the as delivered 1929 passenger scheme. There were 20 M1s originally designated for passenger service. Most of them found their way into freight service. And a few of those at the beginning carried the larger 6-wheel tenders. This one, there is one detail variation I want to catch on here, and that's the doghouse on the tender.
Woof.
Because these were passenger engines, this would not have that doghouse, and that won't be on the model. It's not in the design. But as we were doing catalog art for this, there was some overlap in time for this, and the reference samples we had the doghouse, so you'll see that there. The freight version in the next side of the page here of that same style locomotive does have the doghouse on the tender and would in real life. At the top of the right spread there, we'll see the 1941 version with the Futura style font on the lettering. That was a short-lived paint font. Started in 1941 and was pretty much over in 1941. So things that got repainted at that time had it. Wasn't very common, but it was a neat variation.
Ours will last longer.
Then we have another freight version with the tender, as I mentioned earlier. You'll notice on these pre-war versions, you have, again, some different pilots. You'll have the Pennsylvania letterings closer together as appropriate on the tender. And then when you get to the post-war versions down below, that lettering got a lot more spread out. You have the different style doghouse and larger 4-axle truck tenders here on these last two with different pilots, either the footboards or the heavy cast pilot on the front end, and the headlights relocated to the smoke box front.
Yeah, and while all of these will ship, not weathered or as built, kind of looking clean, we do the black polished rods on some of them, and the first two on the left page there are the polished rods.
Yeah, as built, and in the early years when they were in passenger service, you'd see the polished rods. By the late 1940s, 1950s, they were not polishing the rods on these very, very much. So Penske guys, I think, will enjoy having this much needed addition to the roster.
For sure.
Oh, one other thing we did on that, as I've now already changed the slide, was we moved the control switches from the bottom of the engine up to the top under the domes. So something else that we're doing as we go through models and make tooling changes, because it's a nice feature to not have to pick the engine up and down every time you want to.
Yeah, we're getting old. We're tired of picking them up.
All right. With that in mind, let's move ahead to another large steam locomotive, the FEF3.
It's been a while since we got this guy out.
It's been quite a few years.
It was 2016, I think.
We've done the Challengers, we've done the big boys, so you knew the last of the big three had to come around again soon too. We'll be doing two different variations for the 844, both the two-tone gray Greyhound scheme with the yellow trim and the all-black version. We also have a gray and silver version of the Greyhound scheme, more in-service standard black paint, which will have the darkened rods for the 838. Of course, we've got to do the hot dog engine.
Yes.
As
it's a ballpark Frank.
Paint scheme looks really good on this, and people really seem to love it, so we'll keep those coming. And then perhaps the most unique on this in terms of a detail set is our as delivered number 841 SKU there.
Yeah, it's actually going to be the first time we do an FEF without the elephant ears.
So taking the elephant ears off, this also will not have the red emergency light on the front. And harder to tell, but just I think probably the most significant from a prototype locomotive's perspective was this one will have the coal tender instead of an oil tender.
Yeah, and if you're wondering, the elephant ears are removable. They're just a couple of screws.
So we wanted to do one as it rolled out of the shops and before they got the extra modernization from the railroad. To go with your FEF or perhaps any other Union Pacific steam excursion program locomotives you may have acquired in recent years, or have upcoming on delivery in our Vision series.
Throw it on the back of a turbine.
We've got the new auxiliary water tenders. Lots of requests for these since the big boy came out in volume 1 again. And we knew these were coming down the road. We just wanted to spread things out a little bit to make it easier on people building large fleets. We are switching over and using the veranda style water tenders on this run. It's a little bit closer to the way the rebuilt tenders look today. We're doing both of the modern tanks, and we're doing two versions of each. One has all the features you're used to in our auxiliary water tenders: legacy sounds, control, directional lighting, electrocoupler, and then we're also doing a version without any of those things, just a tender.
You want the sounds.
You want the sounds, but most often these tenders are used together in a pair, so you may not want the sounds and electrocoupler and all that in both of them. So if
you do.
If you do, as Dave says, you can go full featured on both tenders. If not, you can go 1 and 1. Or
did you tell him the flag is flat?
Yes, the flag is a separate panel that's added on there, so it's not just a decal or something printed on the side of the model. It's a standout piece, just like the prototype tenders are.
Yeah, and they're removable.
And removable. Mm-hmm.
Little tiny magnets.
We also have some 18-inch passenger cars. These would be more for an in-service era for the FEFs. These are in the two-tone gray paint scheme, which the Union Pacific introduced in 1946. Again, it was sort of interim paint between the dark green and the all-yellow consists. But from the mid-40s to the mid-50s, you'd see sort of a hodgepodge in a lot of their trains of green, gray, and yellow cars. So if you want a full match set, here's a great opportunity for what would be a really beautiful train, especially behind one of the Greyhound painted FEFs. Or you could get a couple of these and intersperse them with your yellow and green UP for passenger cars and be perfectly accurate and have some fun. All right.
Diesels. This one, finally.
Finally. We have been working on this engine for 2.5 years now.
Yeah.
All new designs, a lot of new tooling.
Yes.
Essentially all new tooling, everything except for the trucks.
This is basically a new engine.
Mm-hmm.
And an engine that needed to be done. It just took us a while.
Yeah, it took a long time to get through the design phase on this because we did want to work in several different detail variations and improvements of our locomotives. The best way I can describe this for those who've known the Lionel legacy diesel line for a while is to compare our earlier SD40-2 with the SD40, SD45 series that we started about 5 years ago. These have much more of those later features in terms of modular tooling that allows for a lot more road-specific detailing, as well as the kinematic pilots, revised switch locations, and so forth. So these are all new locomotives, really retooled from the ground up, and gives us a nice jumping off platform like the SD40 did to do similar locomotives in the SD60 and 70 line with more proper detailing than we've ever done in the past. All the locomotives you see here, road names here, we've tried to do 3 road numbers per road name, except for Reading and Northern because they only had 2 in this paint scheme. But you'll get the options of 2 powered and 1 super base unit. Mm-hmm. Dave, you want to talk a little bit about the super base unit?
Yeah, we've done super base units before in, like ABBA consists, and I think we've even done like an SD70 version. But essentially what the super base is it's got all the electronics in it minus the motor, so it doesn't power itself, and that's so we have more room inside to fit a much more robust sound system. And they usually have a large speaker enclosure, and what that does is it really ramps up the low end quality of the sounds. And what I mean by low end, the bassy rumbling sounds, and that really allows for not only the things like the motor sound to sound more realistic, but when you use this unit to use the signals like the bell or the horn or even the dialogue, you're just going to get a much more robust sound experience out of it. And really is a good unit to put in the middle of like, a 3-unit train or something like that to really bring the sounds much more to life than just a standard powered unit.
Yes, and of course you can mix and match these as well. So if you want to put an SD50 super base in a consist of other types and styles of Lionel legacy locomotives, you can easily do that. It doesn't have to be 3 SD50s on the train, but of course it could be. From a detail and lighting perspective, there are also a lot of options on these locomotives. You'll see different rooftop details, including radiator fans, horn, bell, AC units, etc. Different pilot versions, different battery box covers. We've got 2 different style of trucks here. Conrail used the different style of trucks, so we had tooling made it to make sure that would work. Different lighting packages. You've got the extra lights on the Rio Grande. We've got 2 different styles of ditch lights, either above or below the anti-climbers, depending on what's appropriate for the era of the model being presented here. As road names go, we've got the big cats from Chessie and the B&O reporting marks. Rio Grande, Missouri Pacific. These came right before the full-on UP takeover, so they were very much a UP-looking engine. For Norfolk Southern, we're doing the rebuilt SD40E detail package on this. So these would be a more modern era Norfolk Southern unit, rebuilt mostly from ex-Conrail SD50s. We will get to some of the earlier NNW and NS SD50s in the future run, I'm sure. For Conrail, a powered and super base with the white sill stripe paint, and then also the unique Support Our Troops 6707 from the Desert Storm campaign tribute unit. So you've got those three there. And then for Reading and Northern, the two that they have now, 5018 and 5019 in this fast freight service paint scheme, these have the same paint colors as used on their executive train. So we've got the paint chips right from the RNN to make sure that the colors on these are accurate and very attractive locomotives. So,
Sure.
And we'll see a little bit more Reading and Northern in the not too distant future here as we scroll ahead. All right, SD70 ACEs. We brought back the Union Pacific Heritage Fleet catalog cycle or two ago, and you all responded with some even more enthusiasm than we thought or expected. So it's been now 10 years, a little over 10 years since the Norfolk Southern units hit the rails, and they're starting to go back through the paint shop now for a touch-up and reworks. So we figured it was time to bring these back too, especially since there were 20 of these dropped on us all at once back in 2012. And so some of you may not have had a chance or a budget to get all the ones you wanted all at once. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring them out 5 at a time over the next 4 catalogs as we alternate back and forth between GEs and EMDs.
You can't tell them what's coming out in a future catalog.
I want to give them some hope. Now, I will caution that since another railroad has now decided to start doing heritage units, that may even delay that timeline a little bit more because we want to keep the pipeline nice and even. But for those who are saying, well, where's my Reading or my Pennsy, don't worry, we will get to you too. But this will give you hopefully a chance to complete your fleet or get your favorite ones that you may have missed. As we did with the Union Pacific units, we'll be adding the PTC antennas to the roof. If we see any paint changes or other detail changes that we can recreate on these models happening before we get to that last stage of production where we have to finalize the deco, we will make adjustments on the art to try and capture that to get them looking as they do today. Because you can never quite predict what happens. Inevitably, right after the factory finishes painting them, one of them will go through the paint shop and come out with black number boards or something crazy like that. But we will do our best to keep up with the current events and the news photos that come out on these. We know they're popular.
I think they do it after our catalog goes live just to mess with us.
It's possible. I wouldn't blame them. Each one of the locomotives will be available both powered and non-powered. So if you want one to sit on a mantle or your desk or just build out the roster without them all being powered, you have that option.
Get them all powered.
Union Pacific has also revamped their paint scheme this year, and so we're bringing our first versions of that out as well. They'll have 2 different numbers here, powered and a third non-powered in the new corporate scheme, with the flags relocated to where they don't get as dirty and tarnished from the heat and soot back on their normal position, which I think is a nice touch and a nice return to the older, slightly older style of UP paint, but a new variation. So you'll be seeing this a lot more in real life as they get engines through the shops. It's cool to finally have them in the catalog as well. GP30s.
Ooh, Jeep.
A lot of detail variations here as well. Different plows, lighting, some lighting packages. We've got the train phone antenna for the Pennsy guys.
Whole lot of dynamic braking going on.
Yeah, except on the New York Central. Apparently you didn't need dynamic brakes on the water level route. So that one does not have the dynamics. Which is kind of an more interesting variation on the GP30 than some other locomotives. And of the 2 Conrail units, you see the patched Reading unit, and then the other is a former Penn Central, originally New York Central unit. So that one too will not have the dynamic brake on it. And
some of these have plows. Some of them have multiple horns.
So
There's
a variety of
variations.
Variety of color schemes here. Some we have not done in many years, and are now in new numbers. And some paint schemes that we've done the roads, but we have not yet done the Santa Fe and the as-delivered paint scheme, for example. And so nice to add all of those. Each one available in 2 road numbers, both powered.
Good. I'm biased.
I know you like more power.
More power.
Well, if you like more power, then our F units give you that option for sure. Dave, you want to talk about all of the crazy combinations of boards I make you do in F unit?
Sure, I'll relive that. These are our ABBA sets, which we've been doing obviously for a number of years now in this line. So in the AA set, you have one unit that has a sound system, but both units have power, control, lights, smoke. And so the A helper, is the only one that doesn't have the sound system in that set, but it still will pull a really heavy, long train. And then you got your B units, one of them which is a powered helper, just like the trailing A, that does not have sound. But then you also have the super bass unit, just like we talked about earlier with the super bass. It has no motors in it, so that we could fit a bigger sound system in there. And when you have 4 engines hooked up in a line, you really want the thing to rumble, and this thing does. So one of my favorite things we've done in the recent few years is bring the super bass back and put it in these ABBA consists.
Yeah, if you go all in and do an ABBA, you've got 3 powered units, 2 sound equipped units. When.
Thank you.
And then you've also got the super bass. So I can always tell when they're testing cab units down in engineering because you can hear it all through the building. It's fun. Yeah. More power, more sound is more fun. We've got several road names. Again, there are detail variations on all of these as well. Frisco, Burlington, Santa Fe in the Blue Bonnet scheme.
Which is nice. I like that scheme.
Don't worry, we'll get back to red again at some point too, but it's nice to mix it up again a little bit. These do have the multicolor silver between the painted steel and the stainless steel panels, which is such a trademark on these locomotives. So we'll have that detail as well. Yep. The next page here, we've got Boston and Maine in the Bluebird scheme and Rock Island. And
in the whatever
scheme. This was sort of, again, later paint schemes on these locomotives. And by these years, the older cover wagons were getting repainted and seemed no two got painted exactly the same. So for those who like that era of railroading, a lot of people do just because of this eclectic nature of it. This is a great way to build these really colorful and eccentric consists.
Yep.
And that's why on here you'll see all 4 units pictured. On the previous sped, where we only showed 1 B unit, the 2 units are decorationally identical.
Yeah, one great thing about our ABBA consists is how you can control them too, right? So you think about it, you got 4 different locomotives, so your first instinct would be to give them all separate numbers and build a train. But we also designed them in the code so you can give them all the same ID number, and the trailing units automatically know which direction they're supposed to go. You can also use Bluetooth only control, and the lead A unit in each of these sets will be the master, with the other units being subsets of that lead. So being able to control all 4 locomotives from a Bluetooth controller, such as Universal Remote or the Lion Chief app, is another way of controlling these with ease.
Yeah. And you've got the control switches, so you can select dialogue on and off. So if you don't want all of the sounds to repeat through everything, you can control that as well.
Yep, and some of the B units even have the electric coupler switches if these have electric couplers, so you can make sure that's disabled. There's really any way to run and configure these any way you want.
Probably some of the most anticipated F units here will be the return of the Great Northerns. So that you have proper power for your Empire Builder. The Empire Builder has been one of the most requested passenger consists from us since we started doing 21-inch passenger cars. Now that we have a few new cars in the lineup, we were able to bring a reasonably accurate version of that this time. And so you've got a full train here. This typically ran with either an ABA, a BBA, or sometimes even an ABB. BA consist, depending on the season and how many dome cars they were adding for that particular run. The re-equipping of the train started in 1951, and then the full dome started arriving in 1955. So depending on your era, you can add or take out the full dome car here, which is why we made that separate and put all the sounds in the 21-inch dining car here, so you'd have the sounds on your train no matter which way you went. The 4-pack includes an RPO, coach, Vista Dome, and observation. Then you have an add-on 2-pack with a sleeper and another dome, station sound steiner, and of course the full dome car.
Could we ever paint one in all chrome?
In all chrome, sure.
Yeah, because I want a chrome dome.
A chrome dome. You're making it too easy with Mike in the room, Dave. All right. Moving on to Alcos.
This is a cool little engine.
Yes. We've done a lot of switchers recently. They all share similar features. I always like to bring it back up and mention that these are a single motor locomotive with all wheels powered. So it's a dual drive engine from a single motor. Plenty of power in them. You're never hurting for power. And you also have the benefit of fixed pilots on these engines,
Yes.
which is very nice, and still being able to do an 031 curve with no problem.
Yeah, for sure. These have a lot of upgrades since the first time we released these, well over a decade ago now. But we were able to go from that little pancake speaker up to the full 40 millimeter, Fat Boy speaker, and add track IR as well. So this is a fully featured fully featured legacy locomotive just in a small package. And that's what I really love about these guys.
Yeah. And we've got some fun, colorful road names this time too. The S2 gives you a lot of options. Some railroads had these, but then you also had a lot of private owners as well. And so we picked a nice mix here between Staten Island Rapid Transit with that's just a great color scheme right there.
Mm-hmm.
Canadian National 7020 as it's preserved today. Lehigh New England 611, which is how it's hopefully going to be restored to soon. It's under new ownership now and preserved, and the last surviving LNE diesel locomotive. So we're happy to see that coming back to life. And then we've got 3 from the private sector here as well. The industrial world, Archer Daniels Midland, again, a great paint scheme. NASA and U.S. Army, no shortage of rolling stock out there in our catalog and others for those to be pulling around. So
yeah, and that paint scheme on the NASA is out of this world.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I hope those sales will really take off.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, heading into a couple of our high-end sets. As promised, we've got some more Reading and Northern here. The Royal Gorge, Lehigh Gorge Scenic Railway. Great scenic adventure in eastern Pennsylvania. You've got the SD50 in the blue and gray scheme. 3 of the 72-foot Bethlehem coaches. And a caboose at the back. If you want to make it a little bit longer, you've got another 2-pack of cars here as well. You could also pepper in some of the earlier Reading and Northern heavyweights that we've done. And if you've got an R&N Legacy 425, she'd look right at home on the front of this too. Sometimes the SD50 works in tandem with her, or has certainly in the past on some of the bigger trains in peak seasons. So a fun, colorful set, and I'm sure, especially for anyone who's ridden the train and taken that journey up the gorge, one you'll want to have.
And as our friend on YouTube said, it is Lehigh Gorgeous.
I like it.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
I appreciate that. Mm-hmm. Please, more.
More, yeah. More comments like that, guys. We've got one for the West Coast guys. We've got the Western Pacific Feather River freight set here. 2 of their Fab 4, the last of their 4 surviving cab units in the later green and orange scheme, and a very colorful consist behind it with the orange PS1 boxcar. That'll be a Freight Sounds boxcar with our standard sound features in that. Put on the track, no control required. It clickety clacks and squeaks and moans as it rolls along the track, just like Dave. And then we've got the Feather River covered gondola, bicentennial painted trailer on flat car, and the bright red illuminated bay window caboose. Really good looking Western Pacific train there.
Yep.
Back with the Pennsy again, we've got the middle division set. This sort of follows in line with the Cumberland Valley train we did a few catalogs ago. We started off with a nice Pennsy steam locomotive, of course, in this case, an M1 with detail variations you didn't see in the earlier spread in the catalog. 3 freight cars that all represent industries that were local along this stretch of the railroad between Harrisburg and Altoona, Pennsylvania, sort of the heart of the railroad and the place where the M's were really known for their service. And then, of course, a bay window, a N5 cabin car at the back. This has the yellow pool service cupola and the train phone antenna. The boxcar here is also a Station Sounds boxcar as well.
No, Freight Sounds.
Freight Sounds, yes. We wouldn't make Station Sounds in a boxcar.
Although, just kidding.
Heading into some rolling stock, the American Orient Express was a land cruise of sorts. Started in the 1990s and early 2000s. Eventually, the train grew up to 22 cars long and would be split into multiple consists that ran all over the country, usually trying at the time their excursions in line with special events. So, we would show up in New Orleans around Mardi Gras, or it could be in New England, it could be in the Pacific Northwest. Really, anywhere you want to be, this train would make a perfect home on your layout. As far as power, for the most part, they didn't own too many of their own locomotives. It was usually pulled by at least Amtrak power. So your F40PHs, your Genesis units were really the standard power on these trains most everywhere they went. We've got a 4-pack with 3 different sleeping car configurations and the observation, an add-on 2-pack with another sleeper and the domed observation car with the diaphragm at the end, so you could use it as a pass-through car as they often did, or when the consist was split, one would be at the end of one train and the obs at the end of the other. Station Sounds Diner, of course, and a full-length dome here as well.
And remember, every Station Sounds Diner we do, we record custom audio for the name of the train.
Mm-hmm. And so, beautiful consist. Really love the paint job on these. I saw it once or twice passing by. Obviously, I can never afford a ticket. But it was a neat train and a neat concept. And some of these cars are still out there roaming around. You still see them from time to time. A few additional add-on passenger cars. We've got the Amtrak Great Dome here as well. This is in its last paint scheme right before it went to Western Maryland Scenic, as you've seen earlier in this catalog. So that'll look great with some of your modern Amtrak consists. And then 2 stripped down railway post office cars, just like the prototypes that were used in work train or rec train service. So no lighting or interior details in here. And these were converted over as tool cars for use, as I said, with camp trains, rec trains. So for those who have, your flat cars full of ties and rail and the TMCC rec cranes and things like that, this is a nice piece to add in there.
You literally just saw these and were like, oh, that's cool, we're making them.
Pretty much.
Nice.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I appreciate that.
I think you also would appreciate it and make you put any sound code in them.
It's true.
Unlike the next page.
Here we go.
So up until fairly recently, railroads would have to do a lot of, or still do now, obviously, but still do a lot of training and requalifying and so forth of employees.
Training.
And until recently, it was always usually easier to send the teacher and the classroom around the system to employees rather than try and get all the employees together and send them to one location. So a lot of railroads had small fleets of these instruction cars, which were almost always converted from older retired passenger equipment of some sorts. And our theory on this is, our philosophy around this was do something similar to the electronics in the recent hobo cars and the kitchen cars that we did for the work trains and so forth.
Car, yeah.
So as this is rolling along in your train, you'll hear the normal clickety-clack sounds. But when you spot it on the siding, it will switch over and you'll hear the sound of class in session. So you hear the guys coming in and sitting down and a little bit of instruction or whatnot. Probably a little bit of class clownery as we have some fun with the dialogue on this. A piece that's can be just as much fun sitting in your yard as it is out in a train.
Yep.
And these could be put in a passenger or a freight consist, whichever was most convenient to get from one location to the other. We've got several different railroads represented. Some where it's appropriate and practical, we will put lighted interiors. Others, like the Great Northern car, for example, that has no open windows, we will skip the lights and figures on that. But the deco on that alone, I think, makes that car stand out.
Yeah, it's a hot item.
Most of these are 18-inch passenger cars. The
'Cause
Union
it's on
Pacific,
fire.
yeah.
Yeah.
The Union Pacific version is a 21-inch car to better represent the prototype there. The others are all 18-inchers. Interestingly enough, for a while, that UP car had a giant N-scale model railroad in it. So
We are not replicating.
We are
that.
not, but it'll give you a nice modeling challenge for somebody out there.
What gauge would that even be? Oh, you can't math. Never mind.
No. It's N in O gauge, so that would be no gauge.
So no, we're not doing it.
PS5 gondolas. We'll get through some of our freight cars here. Back line up some both the covered version as well as the Coke canister version, which we had not run in quite some time. For Area 51 fans, you've got both there. You can figure out whatever mystery load you want to put in there. We've also got Bethlehem Steel, PNLE, and Reading for the Coke canisters, U.S. Army, and a fun graffiti version for the covered Gons. We didn't show both sides in the catalog for space, but the graffiti version will, of course, have different deco on both sides.
So what would be in the Area 51 cars, in your opinion?
I could tell you, but then I'd have to kill you.
All right, let's skip it.
Some more rolling stock here, the double sheath boxcars. These hadn't been in the catalog for quite a few years. Nice to have them back in the lineup. We did an additional car here to go in with the Friendship train cars we started a few catalog cycles back. We've had requests for some more cars in that line, so you'll see that there. And then our Patriot Sounds boxcars. So this is very similar to a Freight Sounds boxcar, operates the same way, but we're going to change the sound sets up a little bit. So that instead of the normal rail cadence of a clickety-clack, you'll have more of a marching drum beat type of cadence to the sound of as it's marching along your railroad. And in that idea, we've done, of course, the 4 branches that owned PS1 boxcars prototypically, which were around from the early 1960s, I believe, through 1980s and 90s till they were retired. Some of them are probably still out there. And these will have that sound set. And then we introduced this and talked about this in Volume 1 with the Big Boy set. I mentioned the Union Pacific's World War II poster art, and there would be the first car in that series was in that large Big Boy set. You're seeing more of those cars now. The first 2 sound cars here in this series will be an additional sound car coming up in the next catalog. Each of these features a different piece of World War II Union Pacific poster art on one side, and the other, in place of the slogan, serves all the West, will say Union Pacific serves all our best. So a neat piece there. All told, this will be, I think, about a 25-car train until we're done with it, but they won't all have sound.
I just want to point out one thing, the last comment there from Mr. Phillip.
Not enough SP or cotton belt in this one.
Agreed.
I think we have remedies for that in the not too distant future.
Fine.
Okay, here we see some more of the UP PS1 boxcars. These are in 3-packs. Each car features a different poster on one side. These cars, to help keep prices a little bit more in line, and knowing that this was going to be a large series and there would be several out there who would want to collect them all, these are not the standard fully detailed scale PS1s that we've used in our Freight Sounds cars and others. These use the old Lion scale tooling. So they still have separate ladders, separate roof walks. They're weighted. They have very similar trucks. I think really the only difference now is the hole in the bolster.
Yeah.
So all those same operating features, just a few more molded on details in terms of grab irons or a few less wires on the underbody and so forth, which helped us take a little bit of money price-wise off of each of these for those building a long, impressive consist. You probably want a few of these 3-packs in the row, and then position one of the sound cars, a few more non-sound, add a sound car, and as that train goes along, you'll have a really great effect. There will be more of these cars coming in Volume 1 next year, so you can complete this. Also from the old Lion scale tooling, you'll see the composite hoppers. These were wartime cars that were built with both wood and steel components. 4 road names here: C&O, Burlington, Lehigh Valley, and Pensy. Each of these cars is available as a single car like you see there, and then also there will be 2 3-packs, each with your own unique number. So if you want to build a longer coal train, it's very easy to do so.
Nice.
PS2 covered hoppers. Anything you'd like to add here, Dave?
No.
I feel like I'm monopolizing the conversation.
And that's out of the ordinary?
No, I just feel bad about it.
Well, you know, I'm the electronics and the engineering guy. These just have wheels, but they have pretty colors.
They do have pretty colors. Here we have single cars for most of these decoration schemes, and then 3-packs as well. We've shown the 3-packs for all. Illinois Terminal, CSX, and the patched out Family Line scheme and ADM all have those 4 road number options. And then we did 2 special 3-packs here as well with some of the bright private owner co-op elevator schemes that were popular from the 1960s through the end of the 1980s. You still see one weathered and battered running around every now and then today, but really colorful and can brighten up any contest. So we did 2 different sets of those with a variety of colors and road names. We have some single sheath boxcars as well in this line. These have available singly and in 2 road numbers each. Boston and Maine, Delaware and Hudson, Northern Pacific, and Wellsville, Addison, and Galton, because I get accused of only doing the big roads too much. The Standard O cars, we also have some fun double door box cars here as well. Burlington Northern, 2 different variations of Southern Pacific.
Gasp.
The only one we did paint variations for.
Oh, you're generous.
Western Pacific and Union Pacific here in these road names. And then last but not least, in the scale section here, we've had a lot of fun with our John Deere license over the years, but we've been confined so far mostly to accessories and traditional items. Figured it was time to let some of the scale guys in on the fun too.
Oh dear.
And we've got several pieces of new rolling stock here. We've got the 40-foot flat car with tractor loads. These will have 4 die-cast tractors. The flat car itself is also die-cast. You've got a wood deck, lots of detail on these cars. These are really nice cars. We've got 1 in full-on John Deere paint, and then we did 3 in prototypical road names so that you could have a fully prototypical car for your railroad if you'd like. We've got another gondola with canisters, this time fertilizer instead of Coke. I don't think the Coke would do much good on in the agricultural business, but I could be wrong. Fertilizer though. Don't say it. Don't say
so
it.
much.
And then we have a billboard style boxcar with period advertising art on one of the double sheath boxcars. This one I think turned out really nice. So whether you're a John Deere collector or you just like the billboard reefers and that style of car, this one is right up your alley.
Yeah, these definitely gain traction.
And then to go along with all this, we have a new accessory, our retail dealer and service. The showroom comes with 2 die-cast tractors as well, and has a lot of interior space. So if you have additional collectibles and want to load them up inside there and finish out that scene, it'd be a really fun one to do.
Oh, someday we should do a John Deere rocket launcher. We'll call it the Power Takeoff.
Oh boy. I'm going to call Dear Abby and ask for some. Okay. I think at this point you have heard all you care to and more from Dave and I. So we're going to take a brief pause and bring on Megan and Corey to go through the traditional portion of the catalog. Thank you all for bearing with us, and we'll see you again soon.
It's time to bring some sanity to this mess.
Hi, everyone.
Hey.
Welcome back. I'm Megan Frazier,
And I'm Corey Harwell.
and we're going to go through the traditional section of the catalog with you. Ryan and Dave did a great job of going through all of our O-scale items, and I'm excited to talk about the traditional section here. I'm going to skip on over, and it starts straight with the LC 2.0 locomotives. I'm really excited to have the LC 2.0 locomotives this run. We've got the 726 Berkshire. This is the first time that we've done the Berk in the LC 2.0 features here, with 4 great road names here. We have Lionel Lines, the American Railroads, Detroit, Toledo, and Ironton, and the Santa Fe locomotive. My favorite being the American Railroads with the bright tender on there. Keeping it prototypical and accurate to the original, just note that these do not have they have jeweled markered lights. They do not light, but they do have the rest of the amazing LC 2.0 features on those. Moving on to the diesel locomotives, really excited to bring this one in here. We have the GP7 locomotive here. With this locomotive, what we're doing is we're utilizing some newly acquired tooling to update our previous GP7 with a more detailed body shell. So really excited to be able to introduce this engine with new to us tooling here in 4 really great, wonderful, bright color schemes here and hitting multiple different regions. We have the Denver and Rio Grande, the North Carolina Short Line Railroad, Aberdeen and Rockfish with the John Blue markings on the cab front. The Central Railroad of New Jersey for the Northeast fans, and the Rock Island with the bold, colorful paint scheme.
I love the way the Rock Island came out.
I know,
Really
it's
nice.
really got some great bright red graphics there. The white, the yellow, the red. It's a really fun locomotive.
For sure.
I love doing bright colors, and I think it's why I enjoy doing diesels so much. And then moving on into our traditional Lion Chief world, we are hitting the 280 locomotive again, this time as a Great Northern. What was really fun about this locomotive here is that we are tooling a new load for our hopper car. This will include a load full of potato sacks. I think it's fun. I expect that you will probably be using this in other locomotives and sets as we come. We're really trying to celebrate the agricultural history of the Pacific Northwest by imagining the types of goods that the 1147 would have hauled. And we thought that it would be fun to have it haul some potatoes. And if you want to add on to this wonderful set here, we are also offering the Great Northern flat car with the bulkheads with the wonderful pipe load here. So great fun, easy add-on to what is already a really cool set. And one of the brightest and most fun parts of the catalog here today, the Looney Tunes items. Coming off of the heels of Warner Brothers' 100th anniversary, Looney Tunes product continues to be a hit for Warner Brothers. It's one of their most popular IPs, and great to celebrate such iconic characters and pieces with a really bright and colorful.
So much nostalgia.
So much nostalgia. I think everyone resonates with all of these characters. Everyone has their own favorite Looney Tunes character. So we start off here with the set, and it really does give you every single character of Looney Tunes that you could possibly imagine. I love that it's leading off here with having Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote. Roadrunner's really driving the engine here, and Wile E. Coyote is taking the brunt of it, as he normally does. Then following that off with the character boxcar and the chasing gondola with the Duck Dodgers characters on there that everyone knows and loves, especially Marvin the Martian on there chasing Daffy and Porky Pig. And then ending it off with Granny and Sylvester on the caboose.
Who's your favorite Looney Tunes character?
Tasmanian Devil,
Oh, wow.
by far.
You knew it.
I did.
Right off.
And that is a great segue into saying we're also doing the Tasmanian Devil lenticular boxcar.
There you go.
What's really fun about the lenticular boxcars is you're going to get a lot of motion and movement on these. So if everyone's familiar with the Tasmanian Devil, he really does wreak havoc across everything. And he will wreak havoc across this car, moving from one side to the other. And then also to complete the world here, we have 2 great new accessories. We have the Acme Dynamite Factory. For those familiar with the Sergeant Stumpy's fireworks building that we did a few years back, We are continuing on by using that additional smoke unit that we've put in there. It's got the flickering lights, the fiber optic LEDs, lots of sounds, and a lot of smoke. There is a switch on the side that allows you to have the option to do either high or low smoke here. There are so many little fun details on the side of this building that really make it feel like it fits into that Acme world. So this is going to be a really cool piece, and we'll have some really cool simulated explosion sounds, and again, a lot of smoke and a lot of flickering lights on here.
I cannot wait to see this piece.
It's going to be so cool.
It's going to be explosive.
Explosive.
Right.
And just in case you haven't had enough of the Acme yet, we do have some additional barrel packs there for the Acme Dynamite that'll be fun to kind of set around the layout and really complete the scene for you.
Absolutely. Okay, and then to go with Megan's awesome spread there, we have a Looney Tunes hand car. So as you can see, this hand car is featuring Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck, somewhat frenemies. Their relationship has always been fun and complicated, and I think this will be a really popular duo. And again, going back, if you're familiar with like our Polar Express or our Toy Story hand cars, you're going to love this one. And then continuing on in a series we first started in 2019 around, let's just call it the Saturday morning cartoons, right? That kind of nostalgia. Maybe you're from that generation. I certainly enjoyed it as a kid. And 2 episodes we're featuring here. One is the Hair Trigger with Yosemite Sam and Bugs Bunny. Awesome, playful scenes. They don't like each other very much, but fun to watch on the car. And then also Devil May Hair, where we see Taz, funny enough, get married. So lots of humor, lots of deco, and some fun roof print as well for extra detail. This is going to, exactly, it's going to pair perfectly if you've been a collector for the past few years. And then on the right side of your screen, you're actually going to see a continuation of an American history series we started. We have a powerhouse of anniversaries to celebrate in 2023. The Boston Tea Party 250th anniversary. We have the Battle of Mogadishu, which actually this October, it'll be 30th anniversary. We have 120th anniversary of our Wright brothers, their first flight. And then a 160th anniversary of the Gettysburg Address. I actually grew up 15 minutes from Gettysburg, so I went all the time. So that was a really fun piece to create. But one of the cool things about these cars, too, is, number one, they're printed and assembled here in the U.S. And also, they have lots of fun facts and just special small details that help kind of tell the story of those events and really commemorate them well. So, yeah, if you're a collector and you like these series, you're going to love these products.
It's really cool to be able to celebrate all kinds of different milestones of our American history here, and celebrating anniversaries and all these fun, beautiful events, and showcasing them on these absolutely beautiful cars.
Yeah, America.
All right, moving on to just some assorted rolling stock we have here. For those of you who hadn't seen it yet, we did a campaign a few months back for the Weather Balloon Defense 2-pack. This is limited availability on these. These are expected to deliver this year. So check with your dealers, get an order in, and see if there's any available. Really cool, fun item to add to your layout. But again, just check with your dealers here. And then we also have an additional flat car with bulkheads and pipe load for the Bethlehem Steel. I really love the bright yellow and black on that car there. And another item in here, for those of you who are picking up the Dynamite Factory, might be a good idea to pick up the smoke fluid bottle with the needle dropper. Those will be a 2-pack there. It'll fit a standard Lionel 2-ounce bottle and allows you to get into those hard to reach smoke units there. So really good for all those hobbyists or people who are picking up additional items and accessories that might have a smoke unit that they want to, a tricky smoke unit that they want to get to. The needle applicator makes it really easy to fill their smoke units there.
Really clever way to solve a problem.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that about wraps it up for our catalog today. We're so glad that all of you joined us today. We saw lots of great questions and comments. So check with your dealers. If you have any questions, get your pre-orders in. We'll continue to have more fun shows as the summer progresses. And we look forward to seeing those visitors for the LCCA that are going to be here in a couple weeks. So come ready with some questions there as well.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.